Okay, today I'm going to talk about when your life is in a transition period. These are really important periods. I'm going to talk about, a number of examples of that. But there's a good chance that if you're watching this, your life is in some kind of transition period. And I'm going to talk about how that becomes a difficulty for a lot of us. And then I'm going to talk about how we might deal with that difficulty and then how we might actually use it to create what's next for us. It's going to be the possibility that we have here is that it's going to be something amazing, that it could actually create something completely new for us if we're willing to let it. So let's talk about transition periods. And the word that I've been resonating with is an ancient word called liminal, Liminal. And that is really these in-between spaces. And this is a space of transition. So for example, if I have a meeting here and then a meeting there, in between the two is the liminal space. This is the space of transition, of in-betweenness, where I'm not in one meeting or the other, but I'm actually in between. So that's a really simple example of liminal and transition. But actually, there's a lot of times when we are in that space between tasks, between emails, between messages, between doing something at work and something at home, driving. If you commute or drive from work to home or home to work, the driving is a transition period. Or when you get there and you park and then you're walking from the car to the office, that's a transition period. So let me list a number of transition periods in our lives that are, a little bit bigger than what I just talked about driving, for example. Um, when you are retiring, so you've been working this long career and then you decide to retire. That is a transition period from this career to a new phase of your life. Or maybe it's not retiring. Maybe you're going to try a second act. Maybe you quit this one job and you want to try a whole new thing. Or maybe a third act. Maybe you've done two and now you're going to try a third one in your later years, for example. So those are some examples, but there's actually a whole bunch of other really big ones that I want to touch on. When a loved one dies, that's a transition period. So it's really hard, as you can see, as you can understand, like when someone dies that you care about, it's like, oof, it hurts. There's a loss there. But that is also a transition period to the next phase of your life when you are in the part of your life that is without them. If you lost a really important person, then you are now about to live the next part of your life. And so a loss of a loved one is a transition period. Loss of anything, loss of a job is a transition period. You've been fired or let go or you quit, and now who knows what's next, but you're now in a transition period out of there. If you've moved to a new home, a new city, that's a transition period. If you're starting school or finishing school, if you graduate, these are transition periods. If you're starting a new job, if your kids are leaving the house, which is, my kids have all just become an adult, that's a transition period. If you, decide to become a new something, let's say a new version of yourself, maybe you're going to lose a bunch of weight, that's a transition period. If you're going to become, if you decide to become a Zen practitioner, that's a transition period. And so hopefully you can see that we're very often in these in-between states, the liminal states, the transition states. In fact, some would say we are always in one, going from one to the next, who we were before to who we are next. We are always becoming. And it's important to recognize that because there are some certain properties of these transition liminal states that I'd like to talk about and talk about how to work with them. The first property is that we usually are resisting it. There's something that we are unhappy about, we don't like, and we're resisting it. Oh, I forgot to mention a couple of others. Divorce, ending a relationship, like a romantic partnership. These are transition states. Starting a marriage, starting a romantic relationship are also transition states. Giving birth, having kids, transition states. Okay, so the first property of these transitional liminal states is that we resist it. We are usually unhappy about it in some way. Not, like if it's a good thing, like we just got a job or got married or have a kid, like we're starting something new, starting school. Often there can be like really good things about it, but there will still be some resistance. It's like, I'm losing a part of myself. I'm losing what I'm comfortable with. I'm losing what I'm used to and what I know. And I'm going into the unknown. So even if it's a really great unknown, like I've had a new kid, that's still the unknown, and we resist it in some way. And there's a part of us that is grieving the old thing and doesn't want to go into the known. We are at the threshold and resisting. And that isn't bad that we're resisting it. It's just a property of these states. And it's more or less, but generally it's pretty high. A second one is that it can feel that like a lot of groundlessness, uncertainty, instability, insecurity. This is often why we resist. Fear can be another piece. But groundlessness is like, okay, I have solid ground under my feet, and then I don't. All of a sudden, there's just no solid ground under my feet. That is a sense of groundlessness. It's what uncertainty feels like. And from that, we have resistance and fear. It can also just feel like, I just don't, I feel insecure. I feel unstable. I don't have that sense of like, I have solidness here. And so when we are moving from the known into the unknown, from the comfortable into the, I don't know what's going to be next, when we are losing that old sense of where we were and who we were, there's a sense of instability, insecurity, uncertainty, and groundlessness. This is just a property of this transition. Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we will often resist it. Refer back to property 1. The next property is that there is a greater openness and fluidity to this state. So the openness is, as I said, we are losing what's stable, but the other side of that, the other property of that is that there's a lot more openness and possibility. Like, for example, if I'm used to always doing this, actually, I'll take habits as an example. When I was, quitting smoking, there was a sense of like, oh, this is the thing that I'm used to doing when I feel stressed, when I need some kind of comfort. And when I let go of that, that's a loss. It's a transition. It's a letting go of what I am comfortable with and what I know. But when I let go of it, then it's like, well, now what? When I feel stressed and when I need comfort, what's the next thing? What will I do? And I don't know. I don't know the answer. And there was a number of possibilities, and I tried a bunch. I tried meditating. I tried massaging my shoulders. I tried going for a walk. I tried running. I tried talking to people. I tried, just watching my urges rise and fall. I tried, eating frozen grapes. So I tried a bunch of different things. And more, right? So in this space, we might try a whole bunch of different things, but the thing to notice is that there's a lot of openness there. Now I can, reinvent things. It's fluid. There's not a stability, but there's also not a locked inness. I can actually move things in this transition period. If I'm Losing a job, yeah, I don't have the stability of that job anymore, but now I can find, reinvent myself, find a new thing to do, find a new version of myself. And so that's a property of these transition states, is that they are fluid and open. And that leads us to the next property, which is that they become an opportunity of possibility. We get to think about what we would like next, and we don't know the answer. And so that is a sense of curiosity and adventure that could come into it. And so, yeah, in every single one of these places, let's say I just, got a divorce, for example. Okay, I have a lot of openness now. I've lost all the stability of the marriage that I was in, but there's a lot of possibility here. And I can figure out, like, what is it that I'd like to try next? Who do I want to become? Maybe there's some new things to explore here. Maybe this is the next part of my adventure. The last thing I want to share is something which is that we have rituals usually around these transitions. When we lose a loved one, for example, there are rituals of grieving loss. There's funerals and other kinds of rituals that we go through. When we graduate, we're going from one self to the next. We have a ritual of graduation. When we give birth, there's, baby showers and things like that. When we become an adult, there's often some kind of ceremony in a lot of cultures. And these are rituals of transition, of these liminal states, rituals of becoming. And the things that the rituals usually do is that they ask the person to let go of who they were. So, for example, if you're becoming a Zen priest, you would shave your head. If you go into the military, usually you get a pretty clean buzz cut as well. That is letting go of who you were before. This is a sense of loss and separation that we can really embrace. There isn't anything wrong with loss and separation. It can hurt, but it's a letting go of who you were. And then we celebrate like who you are becoming, so this kind of open state. And then we can celebrate the integration into the new society. Like, for example, if you are graduating, we're celebrating you becoming the next, in the next phase of your life. And so we want to honor all three of these parts. The letting go of who you were, letting go of your old self, separation from your life from before, the transition part of becoming, and then the integration. And so we can learn from these rituals of transition that exist in all cultures, and bring that kind of sense of ritual to whatever transition we are in right now. If you are looking to become a new version of yourself, looking to reinvent what you do in the world, losing a relationship or a loved one, use these rituals, letting go of your past self, a ritual of becoming what's possible that's next, and then a ritual of integration. How can you actually have yourself become and integrate into this new version of yourself, this new life, this new society that you're in? And so I don't have the answers for you for those. You can look at rituals that exist in society, but you can also create your own. And you can reuse that ritual in every transition, which is, we have rituals, we have transitions every day. We have transitions throughout the day, but definitely we have transitions of, the year, for example. New Year is letting go of what was past and starting something new. We have birthday rituals. We have rituals of seasons. And harvest rituals would be an example of that. Halloween is letting go of the harvest ritual going into winter. And in these transition periods, we have to, the opportunity is to let ourselves grieve whatever was past and letting go of that, and then reinventing ourselves and then integrating it. That's what I want to share with you. I actually think liminal states, transition states, periods of change and transition, as full of instability as they are full of possibility as well. And I think they're really beautiful. I encourage you to embrace them.